Can you tell us about this exhibition and explain it to us what it is about and why the exhibition has been titled as the constructions?
Yes, this exhibition is was previously done at Baroda, exhibited at Baroda, and around Feb, and there was a plan to carry it, but of course at that point we were going to have a proper exhibition which would be set up, but because of these conditions, we decided to do it virtually with SEPT, and the main theme of constructions means it has been inspired by constructivist art, and that is the reason why it is called constructions. Basically, it can be spatial constructs, and it can be planar constructs, it can be color constructs, and all of that with an aim. The idea of this exhibition was to show a process in which I work, wherein I take inspiration from art and then apply it to my architecture making process. And that's why within the exhibition we also have a section which is dedicated to a lot of our workshops that we do with students. We call it architecture and art in architecture. And because in that, what we do is basically take inspiration from a work of art. Most probably, we decide to take constructivist art because artists like Malevich, Popova, Lisinski, and the students take up a painting from there, and then they try to extrude it in third dimension by making spatial volumes and journeys within it. So the idea was in this exhibition to overlap some of the students' work as well as my work, which is and the student work which is done through the web studio and with regular workshops that we have, and to show how both of these overlap in a way. The other idea of this competition was to show my working process, wherein we take inspiration from art. So there are a lot of iterations on Maverick's work, which we call it the improvisation series. And wherein taking the original work of Maverick, we have taken it as a point of departure in order to generate many iterations from it, which at a certain point of time could come to use while making a concept for a project. Plus, in this exhibition, we also have exhibited about 5 to 6 competitions which we have undertaken in the last 1.5 years, starting with the Guggenheim competition, Guggenheim reimagined in New York City, whereby on the site of Frankfurt Wright's Guggenheim, it was imagined that there would be a new building of the new century, and that would be the new icon for New York. So that is what we won the first prize for. And then we also have the Notre Dame exhibit, which is the resurrection of the new spire for Notre Dame Cathedral, which has been burnt. And we have book studio in Central Park, and we have we also have other many other competitions which are included in the idea was to do the back and forth, whereby one would be able to trace the process of the competition way back to the process of my making art, and then how the two are interrelated in a way. So that is what the idea of this exhibition was.
So, in a way, it's about exploring the in between realm of art and architecture and trying to find different ways where both can inform each other. Art also and architecture also. So, in this current exhibition, what are the various kinds of works? Like one you talked about, there are competitions, and where you have gone ahead and applied this approach of art and architecture to various competitions and various real scale problems of architecture. What are the other aspects, other things? Are there paintings? Are there installations also that have been included in this exhibition?
In this particular exhibition, we didn't have an installation, but in the last exhibition that we did at the Baroda Gallery, because it was done in a metal fabricator's workshop, we managed to get hold of a whole lot of scrap, which is the metal scrap, and with which we erected an installation. Now that installation is an in between a painting and an actual building. It has a sense of scale where a person can go through and experience different journeys. So it is on a human scale, and the idea of that was that it is an abstraction, of course, from a painting, the second step. But then, if you take it further, then it would go into architecture painting. So it was that in between step between a painting and an actual architecture painting with spatial volumes and masses. So, but unfortunately, in this particular space, because of the space constraints, we were not able to erect this installation, and also because the material belonged to the fabricator, and there was no way that we could, set it up. So that part is missing, which is the installation part. So it does have some photographs of the installations which were done prior to that, which were scrap metal pieces which were compressed into cuboids, and from therein we tried to draw an analogy of city planning based on that. And these were done, in fact, about almost 7 to 8 years back. So there are pictures of that in this exhibit. In this exhibit, what we get to is that besides just that one A1 sheet submission, which is there in this competition, which is a requirement, we have also exhibited our entire process, right from conceptual sketches all the way up to the final sheet, and also a model at times we have made an actual model, physical model. All of these are exhibited together with it. And we see competitions as an important part of our practice, which is more drawing based, and we are trying to always experiment and trying to explore new grounds and trajectories within it. And incidentally, all these competitions have been done together with the students most of the time. And that is when the students come together. There's a new kind of energy for each competition. There's a different team coming together, and this is how the process also helps them break the monotony of the regular teaching schedule, as well as it opens up their minds to new ideas and concepts.
Yeah. I would come back to this online medium of exhibition. Want to ask you a little bit more about the process of art and architecture. So the way I understand what you explained is that the process of abstraction becomes a kind of a bridge between art and architecture. Is that the way it is?
Yes, it does. It does, because when I say that we take up a painting, and when I get a construction site to handle and we get a project, say for example, then because of my exposure to a lot of paintings from the constructivist era and systematism, because of my association with Zahavi, a lot of these paintings come to my mind when I see a site. It is a simultaneous kind of an activity. And then what I try to do is I try to appropriate that painting with the site context. In a way, that painting tries to reach out to the different things which are outside of the site, maybe a visual vista, or a marker, or a natural formation somewhere, or an important building or a structure somewhere which we need to respond to. And slowly the painting sort of tries to grow and become a diagram. And then I call it a diagram of possibilities, because then that is the diagram which allows me to start making masses and spaces within it. And when I say that this is a process, it doesn't mean that it's a literal process. there are certain choices and decisions that I make along the way, whereby which mask to exclude and which not to exclude, which elements could remain just within the landscape and which elements could become actual masses, which elements would become open areas, which elements would become those contained areas. And it may happen that the end of the whole process, the painting only serves as a point of departure in order to make architecture, and it may also happen that when this whole process gets done, you may only see faint traces of the painting on the site, and the rest of it has disappeared and taken on its own existence. So I let the process drive me. There is no preconceived notion in mind, and that leads to sometimes very astounding results. And of course, because we need to make architecture, we slowly start putting in layers of articulation, layers of circulation, layer of structure, layer of built masses, layer of relationship of built masses to open space, the layer of landscape. All these layers slowly start getting collated with each other in order to make sense and to make it an architectural spatial construct.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting process, because so you said rightly that the painting actually becomes a point of departure, and it helps you in generating a diagram, which can then be taken further by giving a response to various layers of that deal with an architectural object. Okay, so you could deal with, let's say, the landscape. You could talk about circulation, structure, movement, light, and in a way that painting sort of helps you in anchoring something that you can always go back to and achieve certain basic qualities in an architectural object that you achieve. So I think that sounds a very interesting approach to me, and I've always admired that approach. I would you talked about, because knowing you've been teaching for a very long period of time. You've been associated with the field of gatherings also, and your interaction with the students is something also that we are aware of. We talked about the workshops. Now, how do you try to bring these things into these workshops? So, what are these workshops like, and what do the students do as a part of these workshops?
The idea of these workshops came about by when I left Navratna. I was very keen to start my own studio, and I started my own studio. But I would be very honest that we do very little built work. Our work is mostly concentrated in research, documentation, partly publication, and conducting small seminars and conducting workshops. And also exhibiting our work, which is this exhibition going on, because we feel all these activities are a kind of an outreach for us, and an outreach to different institutes all over, and to expose the students to a different way of thinking, to expose students to an alternative way of architecture making. And with that reason, this whole idea was born that we would why don't we work on workshops, modules, which would be spread out for a period of 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. If it is vacation period, then it would be consecutive days. If it is ongoing college, then it would be the evening hours that we would have. So these are the modules we came up with, and I wanted to focus only on modules which I myself would be able to give something to. So I picked up modules in my areas of interest, which, as you mentioned, which is something that I have taught over the years, and this is an investment over a long period of time, and I feel that it was time to give back and to also take along different students and expose them to these different processes which are going on. And it's a back and forth, it's a two-way kind of dialogue. I mean, I learn as much from the students as the students learn from me. So this is how the workshop started, and one of our first workshops being the art and architecture workshop. We call it art architecture, and this workshop is basically about my interest in art. So we tell the students that because there are a lot of questions that they have. They say that it's a method whereby how do we take painting literally and transfer it into a work of architecture by just executing volumes. I mean, does it really make sense? How is it going to help us? Where is it going to take us? How is this process valid? Of course, then I explain to them that it is an alternative approach, a different way of thinking. It may not lead to direct benefit in terms of their application in their studios or other ongoing projects that they may have, but it is indirectly a way of opening up mind to a whole lot of indirect influences, and one of the major influences being art, but it can also be different influences from the world of fashion design, from the world of graphic design, from the world of product design, because what is constantly happening all over the world is there is an overlap of all these disciplines, and there is a cross-disciplinary approach, and that is what we wanted to focus on in the Red Studio, that we wanted a studio which was cross-disciplinary, truly in nature, and that is how this workshop started. And slowly an interest was generated because we let the students take the ownership of the idea. We not only we pre-select the paintings and we give it to them, but we allow them to analyze them into different layers. At the same time, we give them some inputs based on our previous students' work, as well as some of my work, as well as some of the paintings, or as well as some other architects who are working on similar lines. And we slowly acquaint them with this whole process through a whole lot of PowerPoint presentations by simultaneously together with their project work. And slowly they start analyzing these paintings into layers, as I mentioned. Slowly they start imagining architectural masses, way a human being would carve out a journey through them, the way they would be semi-covered, covered spaces in this whole landscape. There are then the different ways and the different journeys that an individual can chalk out through that, through these spaces. So slowly the seeds are sown as to they start thinking about this act of architecture making, and they also recognize which axes are important in the painting, what is the structure of the painting, how is the composition organized around, what is the matrix of the painting, what are the important constituent elements which are something cannot be compromised in the painting. So all of these issues are simultaneously dealt with and expected them to share presentations, as well as by giving them inputs while they are working. And slowly we start preparing conceptual models, and then we prepare the final models. So the whole act is that how do you translate something that is two-dimensional into the third dimension, and that is what the constructivists did. Most of the constructivist paintings are of flat color tones, but within those flat color tones, you can always imagine these masses to be held in space as if they are floating. So you wouldn't believe, but after some time, the students start enjoying the process. They start understanding the importance of it. They start drifting during the process. They start imagining spaces within the project. They add their very own interpretation and make the process much more richer sometimes. And that is how we carry along with it. And besides architecture, I also taught history and theories. So we also have modules on history theory of postmodernism, deconstruction, minimalism, wherein there are a set of PowerPoints which are shown, and at the end of it, the students take up project in a group work by an architect who has an alternative way of practice, and take up one of their projects and start decoding the entire design process of that particular project of the architect they have chosen, and then they start documenting it in the form of models and also in the form of report. So we have modules related, and also at the same time, I thought that the idea was that we could carry these modules to the different institutions. So we also have some foundation level exercises that we have developed along with it, which I have been conducting together with my colleagues at the studio with various institutions also quite successfully. So these are all for consecutive 4 or 5 days, and we make sure that we complete the entire exercise right from the drawing to the model and the entire process. The work gets displayed in that institution. Then it is opened up to different questions and criticism. The entire school gets involved. There is a new kind of energy, and that is what the whole idea is to do about that. So we have this. We have another studio which is called Introduction to Deconstruction, wherein the processes of deconstruction are shared. The philosophy of deconstruction is shared through a whole lot of PowerPoint presentations, and then the students take up a project work for erecting follies within Kamati Park. Follies are small pavilions which they are given different contexts, either near the planetarium or near the bandstand or near the bridge, Walkway Bridge, or near the river, and then they start relating their project to the context, and their projects are based on some of the terms which are used in construction. So they combine some of the terms and come up with the project with some kind of broad functions which could be accommodated within it.
Yeah. So there is a lot of different kinds of workshops and different kinds of processes that we are offering. And currently, also at Archidagis, we are offering 2 workshops. The one that you talked about, the art and architecture, we titled it as architecture. And in that, we are trying to explore the process that you just mentioned, where we take a painting and through a series of stages, we take it to an architectural object. And the other workshop also is something that we talked about, where we are trying to understand the theoretical anchoring of some of these processes. So we talk about deconstruction, postmodernism, minimalism also, and in this workshop, the students will basically gain a theoretical understanding behind some of these architects' approaches, because many times students just get carried away by the physical looks of the building, and they are not able to understand the process behind that particular architect. And so it's really fascinating, because the other workshop, art and architecture, lets you actually practice that process, whereas in this second workshop that we are trying to talk about, we are basically saying that you gain a theoretical understanding behind some of these processes. So I think that sounds really fascinating to me. I have just a few questions regarding your current exhibitions. So I thought, how is your, because of this coronavirus pandemic, a lot of things have been moved online, a lot of teaching has moved online, and similarly, a lot of exhibitions have also moved online. And since you have done the same exhibition in the physical space and now you're doing it in the virtual space, how has the experience been? What are your experiences? Can you please share some of those?
Of course, a physical exhibition, nothing can beat that, because of the sharing, the dialogue which happens, because the work is actually there. The other thing is, I can always relate something which is there on one wall with something which is there on another wall, and then I can weave up the narrative very easily. It is easier for me to go back and forth and explain the journey or the translation of something which has been there, which has been done some time back, but which only came to fruition after a while. So I'm able to draw the links and I'm able to draw the connections much better and explain in a much better fashion. If it is an offline, on-site, I am able to actually make installations and actually exhibit models in an offline, in an offline kind of a scenario, whereby it becomes much easier for the students to imagine the three-dimensional space that we are talking about. The students also and the other colleagues who visit the gallery in an offline kind of an exhibition scenario also have a much more fulfilling kind of sensation when they see the overall, and they are able to draw connections and understand the journey which I have undertaken in a much better way. Probably when I'm answering them, I'm also able to refer to the actual work with which I can explain to them in a better way as to why I have done what I have done and where I'm going after this exhibition, so that the journey becomes very easy to calibrate and define. Wherein in the case of online, wherein in the case of online, though I must say that Zen has been a wonderful effort. They tried to, because all the walls have because we did it earlier in an offline way, it was much easier for us to set up on the walls everything that we wanted to. So, and we had a good support from them. We were able to do that. Plus, with the help of a software, what they were able to do is, I'm sure it's nothing new. It is done elsewhere too, probably. But for me, it was for the first time. If a person wants to dwell into the painting, a particular painting for a longer time, then there is a contrivance within the software that can be paused and one can look at each of these paintings. So that was an advantage, I feel, and that has kind of been a saving grace, whereby because sometimes there are some finer details in our drawings, like I have shown conceptual sketches, and these drawings are very light, and when you exhibit them and look at the wall from a further distance, they are hardly decipherable. So when then Sepp came up with this suggestion of blowing up each of these drawings, and whoever wants to go to a particular drawing is able to go to, and that has really helped. So in a way, the experience has been much better than what I had envisioned, and I think there has been a good feedback. The other thing about online was that I was able to reach out to a larger audience, so that is one of the advantages of it, whereby people from other places could join in. There was an interesting question-answer session which happened after the whole journey of the exhibit, so that was quite fulfilling in its own way.
Yeah, I think it's really nice. I mean, I've seen this exhibition in the offline mode earlier when it happened, and it's really fantastic. Yes, there are some limitations, as you mentioned, that physical space you can interact with the people who are going through. You can explain the sequence in a much better way. But then, of course, there are benefits of the online one also, because you can reach out to a much larger audience. You can also have a much better connectivity. You can really go really close to a painting, zoom it and see, what the texture is like, etc. So there are takeaways from that as well. So I'm really thankful to you for giving us time for this interview. Just like to conclude here with a small note that Professor Percy Pithawala's exhibition is currently going on. It is at SEP University. It is online, so you can visit the SEP University's website, sep.ac.in. From there, you can get a link to the exhibition, which is completely virtual online. Please go and visit. It is really fantastic. Some really fantastic processes. If you are even remotely connected with any of the field of art, architecture, or even design, you will really find it really fascinating, and you will be able to see some of the processes that Professor Percy has been talking about in this interview. And the last thing is that we are at Archidiaries, and also as Professor Percy has mentioned that in his own studio, which is based in Vadodara, Red Studio, we are offering many of these workshops. So you can go to the Red Studios page also, and you can also visit Archidiaries page also, archidiaries.com, if you are further interested in knowing about these workshops, and if you are interested in attending them, you can visit either Red Studio page, or you can also visit Archidiaries page for further information. So thank you so much, sir, for giving us this time, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Physical world.